Marvel, Hela's husband breaks the universe. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 61. Yi Bai and Hela finally landed after not knowing how long they had fallen from the entrance of the dark and deep cave. With the help of the eternal fire burning in Hela's hands, Yi Bai clearly saw where they were now. This was a huge cemetery, where countless bones were buried. The most conspicuous was the corpse of a giant wolf. Hela stepped forward and looked at the giant wolf full of weapons, her eyes reminiscent. Once upon a time, the giant wolf Fenrir was her only trusted partner. During the rebellion when she was sealed, the Asgardians also killed the giant wolf Fenrir. Fortunately, there was room for everything to be restored, and she also had Yi Bai. After another glance at the corpses of other soldiers who followed her in the North and South wars, Hela came to the center of this necropolis. Then she raised the hand that was holding the eternal fire and patted it directly on the ground. In the next moment, a circle of fire continued to expand with Hela as the center, and soon spread to every corner of the cemetery. The soldiers who had already died were revived one after another. They formed a queue and stood in front of Hela. The giant wolf Fenrir also burned with a dark green light and quickly climbed up from the ground. After shaking his body a few times and throwing away all the weapons from his body, the giant wolf, Fenrir, saw Hela. Then Fenrir, the scary wolf, approached Hela like a puppy. But at this moment, the giant wolf, Fenrir, found Yi Bai standing beside Hela. Fenrir, the giant wolf, was very alert to people he had never seen before. Directly grinning at Yi Bai, he let out a threatening growl. Pop, Hela slapped Fenrir unceremoniously on his head. You better be honest with me. Hela cursed at the giant wolf, Fenrir, dared to grin at the old lady's man. Sooner or later she would stew you. After being hit, the giant wolf Fenrir also restrained his fierceness and made a low whimper from his mouth. Yi Bai didn't take it to heart either. Instead, he felt that the giant wolf, Fenrir, was quite handsome. If he were to be a mount, he would definitely pull the wind. As for Hela, after awakening these former partners, she did not stay in this necropolis for a long time. Today, she was taking the time to revive her former partner, but in fact, she was still very busy. As the newest king of gods, Hela had to deal with too many things. As for Yi Bai, there was nothing for him to do. So he was touring Asgard to see the scenery. When Hela was finished with her work, it would not be too late for the two of them to celebrate. When Hela was busy withdrawing power and establishing her own authority, the rest of the 9 realms were not peaceful at all. The Earth was okay. The Earth didn't know anything about Asgard at all, and it didn't even have the concept of the 9 realms. But in the other worlds in the 9 realms, it was not so peaceful. In Vanaheim, NJRD of the Vanir Protoss was listening to the report. Odin is dead? Is this news confirmed? NJRD frowned and confirmed it from the man in front of him. Great King, I am quite sure of the authenticity of this news. Many people in Asgard have witnessed this scene. Odin is really dead. Hela, the despicable goddess of death, killed her father Odin and sought power to usurp the throne, which is a heinous crime. The man kneeling in front of NJRD quickly assured him. As for what was despicable and shameless, it was naturally just an artistic process. In fact, the people of Asgard had accepted the fact that Hela became the king of gods. Although they were indeed dissatisfied with Hela's killing of Odin. But with Frigga's support and explanation, Hela's throne could be considered stable. And Asgard had always respected the strong. As long as you were strong, you would be respected. To put it bluntly, Asgard was a place full of violent blood. Okay, good death, Odin, you have today too. After confirming the authenticity of the news, NJRD stood up excitedly and then yelled. Well done, Hela did the right thing. Odin, this guy, should have died long ago. These were NJRD's true thoughts, and they were also the true thoughts of most of the gods in the 9 realms. After all, Odin was too strong. While Odin was still alive, the other gods of the 9 realms had to bow their heads and worship him. Otherwise, they would be beaten. It's great now. The old fellow, Odin, was finally dead. Those of them who had been suppressed by Odin for a lifetime finally turned over. The order goes on, the whole army prepares. We will go to avenge King Odin. NJRD quickly calmed his mood, and then ordered his men. As for revenge, of course it was impossible. Because of the things that Odin did before, who was willing to avenge him? He just saw the opportunity and planned to make some profit. NJRD had planned everything. He wanted to overthrow Hela's kingship in the name of revenge for Odin. Then let the young Thor become the new God King, and he was responsible for assisting him. To put it bluntly, he just wanted to use Thor as the puppet god king, so that he could become the true lord of the 9 realms. As for the success of this plan, NJRD had full confidence. He couldn't beat Odin. But how was it possible that he couldn't even beat Odin's daughter? And he didn't plan to go on his own. Instead, he called a few more helpers to help. With his status as the king of the Vanir, was he still afraid that he couldn't find a helper? NJRD, who had made up his mind, thought happily, as if he had already seen the picture of himself becoming the lord of the 9 realms. In the 9 realms, there were actually 2 races that were the strongest. One was the Sur of Asgard, headed by Odin. The other was the Vanir of Vanaheim, headed by NJRD. Neither of the 2 accepted each other, and countless wars often broke out between each other. Until Odin was born, he became the Sur suppressing the Vanir. In the end, the Vanir bowed their heads and recognized the identity of Odin as the God-King of the 9 realms. They considered themselves ministers. But hatred was not so easy to be forgotten. Now that Odin was dead, the Vanirs naturally wanted revenge in order to wash away their humiliation. Hela didn't know that for her position as the king of gods, which hadn't been completely secured yet, a new challenger was about to come. Episode 62. In a dark area of the universe, a huge fleet was docking here. In the largest main ship, a tall purple sweet potato essence was listening to the report of his subordinate Ebony Maw. Great Father, we have already found out that Odin, the God King of the 9 realms, is dead. Although the face of the ebony throat was ugly, but his words and deeds were very elegant. They gave people a noble feeling. As for why he called Thanos father, it was because Thanos was his adoptive father. The 5 Black Order generals were actually the godsons of Thanos. Really? Are you sure? It's not fake news. After hearing the report of Ebony Maw, Thanos turned around and confirmed it from Ebony Maw again. His huge body cast a large shadow, giving people a huge sense of oppression. When facing Thanos, even Ebony Maw was a little panicked. But soon he nodded. Yes, it is clear that Odin is really dead. After listening to the words of Ebony Maw, Thanos nodded, but his inner excitement did not show. After so long? The old guy finally died. God knew how much Thanos longed for Odin to die soon. In a very early time, when Thanos had just upon hit the idea of Infinity Stones. After learning that the Space Stone among the Infinity Stones was in a place called the Earth. Thanos couldn't help but want to take this stone for himself. Unfortunately, the young Thanos met Odin and was educated. That was why Thanos did not go to the Earth in person at the beginning. Otherwise he would have died long ago. Those fleets sent to the Earth were shattered by Odin before they got close to the solar system and turned into countless space junk. They were still floating outside the orbit of the solar system. If Thanos was there, the consequences would not be better. Since that incident, Thanos knew that if he wanted to collect all the Infinity Stones, Odin was a hurdle that he couldn't get around. As he couldn't fight, he could only wait. Finally, after waiting for so many years, Odin finally died. The excited Thanos could not wait to drive the spaceship to the Earth immediately and take the Infinity Stone. However, Thanos quickly resisted his urge. He had to do it step by step. After suffering a reckless loss, Thanos was much smarter. Even the collection of Infinity Stones had been well planned in detail. If he only took one step at a time, Thanos believed that he would succeed in the end. Because for him, it was his destiny. Ebony Maw, you go to Nidavellir and meet those dwarves. So that they can start forging Infinity Glove. Thanos told Ebony Maw that forging the Infinity Glove was the first step in his plan. If there was no Infinity Glove, even if he collected the 6 Infinity Stones, they would be useless. Yes, I will do it now. After Ebony Maw took the order, he quickly walked down. For everything that Thanos ordered, Ebony Maw strived to do it perfectly. And this time was no exception. After the Ebony Maw disappeared, Thanos showed a smile. Although his big mouth was a bit scary, Thanos was indeed in a good mood now. With his destiny added, Thanos believed that he could finally accomplish his goal and become the one who saved the entire universe. Hela was not clear about the storm that was about to come. She was taking over the rites of Asgard while preparing for Odin's funeral. After all, Odin was the god king of the previous generation, and there must be enough preparation for the funeral. Although Odin was killed by her, Asgard itself had this rebellious gene. Didn't Odin come here like this? And with Frigga supporting her behind her back, who would dare to say anything? Of course, private criticism was definitely indispensable. After all, the reputation of father killing was indeed not good. There was no other way. she had to kill Odin. Just because of Odin's previous deeds, there was no reason to let Odin go. As for those criticisms, let them go. After thousands of years, who would remember this incident? Time was the perfect way to bury the truth. In addition, Hela had also been constantly promoting the achievements she had made for Asgard during this period. It was undeniable that Hela really contributed greatly to Asgard. Asgard could have the current prosperity, it was absolutely indispensable from the contribution of Hela. It's just that Odin had erased the achievements of Hela in the past. Hela naturally wanted the Asgardians to remember her work again, which was also a means to buy people's hearts. In fact, most of the people of Asgard didn't care who their god-king was. As long as their god-king was surnamed Odin and was strong enough, it would be fine. For this reason, Asgard had not many voices dissatisfied with her now. But at this moment, Hela got bad news. Njrd, the king of Vanaheim, unexpectedly summoned some secluded gods, intending to overthrow her tyranny. To put it simply, those guys looked at the fact that Odin was dead and planned to make trouble. If possible, Hela did not want to initiate a war. After all, it was time for the transfer of power. However, if someone took the initiative to send it to the door, that was another matter. If she could perform well in the face of those enemies, she was likely to win a lot of people's hearts. Nothing could consolidate the king's authority better than winning a war. When she thought of this, a sneer appeared at the corner of Hela's mouth. Those who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make trouble, as long as they dared to come, they shouldn't even want to run. Soon it was the day when Odin was about to be buried. Under the rituals of Frigga, Odin's body was placed in a flower boat, intending to float along the river and into the sea. This was the tradition of Asgard, and the same was done for Frigga in Thor 2 when she died. However, just when Odin's body was going down the river, a group of uninvited guests suddenly appeared. Njrd took the lead. He had brought a large army of Vanir, and the helpers he had found, and went directly to the land of Asgard. And he was not polite at all. He directly released his coercion, which showed that he was obviously malicious as the person who came to attend a funeral. Where is Hela? Whoever kills the father and seizes the emperor should be punished. Njrd was the first to speak, and his loud voice spread throughout Asgard. His words also immediately aroused the resentment of the people of Asgard. Who was this person? He was so arrogant as soon as he came, directly asking the new king of Asgard to die. No matter what Hela had done, it was also an internal matter of the Asgardians. When was it his turn as an outsider to talk about it? Moreover, these people thought that Njrd was too arrogant. He broke into Asgard's land without even saying hello. In the past, the Asgardians were arrogant. When was it the Vanir's turn to be arrogant? At this moment, Frigga walked out of the crowd and looked at Njrd, who was extremely arrogant. Frigga naturally knew Njrd, not only because of her status as a queen, but also because she herself was from Vanaheim. Frigga, although she was the queen of Asgard, she was born in Vanaheim as a member of the Vanir. Episode 63, War, Thor Awakens, 1. In fact, Frigga's and Odin's marriage was a political marriage, in essence. That was when the Sur and the Vanir were still at war. The cruel war had made them feel very tired, and both races hoped to end this meaningless war. And the best way to end the war was undoubtedly to become in-laws. As a result, Frigga became Odin's wife, and the war between them ended. However, Frigga had deep feelings for her political marriage with Odin. So much so that by now, Frigga had completely regarded herself as the queen of the Asgardians rather than a member of the Vanir. So in the face of the menacing Njrd, Frigga's expression was very angry. The king of the Vanir, you must clearly explain the purpose of your coming to Asgard. At the same time, you have to apologize for your rude words. When Frigga was by Odin's side, she always felt very kind. But in fact, she was also a woman of authority. Just like now, when defending Asgard's face, she took the initiative to stand up and confront Njrd without showing any weakness. Odin's death was a regret in Frigga's heart, but Frigga also knew that this was Odin's own choice. Besides, even if Hela did too much, it was an internal affair of Asgard. When was it the turn of you outsiders to point it out? Njrd obviously didn't expect Frigga to stand up and scold him. This was completely different from what he expected. According to common sense, shouldn't Frigga ask for his help and use his power to overthrow Hela's tyranny who sought to usurp the throne? Moreover, Odin was obviously killed by Hela herself. Why did Frigga still support Hela to become the king of gods? Obviously, Njrd, who didn't fully understand the whole thing, was a bit at a loss about the current situation. However, this was not enough to shake his determination this time. Since Frigga didn't cooperate, he had no choice but to insist. Odin was dead, anyway. Who else could stop him in Asgard now? Odin was the God-King of the 9 realms, the great lord of the 9 realms, and my best brother. I can't accept that my best brother will die at the hands of his own daughter. This is a great treason. So I have to do something for my brother, Odin. I want to avenge him. Hela needs to pay for what she did. NJRD said that he had a good relationship with Odin, and he just came to avenge Odin, which made Frigga even more angry. Pooh. He and Odin were good brothers. When Odin was still alive, would he dare to say this? Others didn't know, but didn't she know yet? What was the end of Odin's brother? Didn't he have any points in his heart? Yes, Frigga had already seen it. After Odin's death, NJRD finally couldn't restrain his ambitions, and wanted to challenge the supremacy of the Asgardians. This was also normal. The stage when Hela had just ascended the throne would definitely be the most chaotic year for Asgard. It was not difficult to understand that ambitious people wanted to seize this opportunity. Frigga was also worried about this, and she was not sure whether Asgard could tide over this difficulty. If Hela couldn't give a strong response when the enemy arrived, her position as the king of gods was likely to become a complete joke. Looking at Frigga with a heavy face, NJRD showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. This was the effect he wanted. After being suppressed by Odin for most of his life, he finally saw the dawn of turning over for the first time. More importantly, his ambitions began to grow. Since Odin was dead, why couldn't he become the king of the 9 realms? The movement on NJRD's side naturally attracted Hela's attention. In fact, Hela was with Yi, looking at NJRD, who was flying in the air, arrogantly. Need me to help you solve them? Yi said to Hela. In fact, he didn't really want to intervene in these things. The previous shot against Odin was because Odin provoked him first. But NJRD was obviously coming to Hela, and he couldn't be indifferent. Hela shook her head, dispelling the idea of letting Yi help. I must respond to him personally, and I also have this strength. Hela was right. She must rely on herself to solve NJRD's trouble. She was the God-King of the 9 realms, so she should show the strongest strength of the 9 realms. In this regard, Yi couldn't help. Only when she defeated these people, Hela's position as the king of God would be justified. This was the battle for the rectification of Hela. After greeting Yi, Hela called the giant wolf Fenrir, straddled the giant wolf Fenrir's back, and walked towards NJRD. Asgard's new king, Hela, must respond to NJRD's provocation. Hela's whereabouts were quickly discovered by NJRD. In fact, with the size of the giant wolf Fenrir, Hela could not conceal her whereabouts at all. Under the gaze of much attention, Hela rode the giant wolf Fenrir and came to NJRD's front. People of Vanir? Do you want to start a war again? Hela looked at NJRD and the large number of other gods from the 9 realms, and said in a serious tone. Her words also agitated the people of Asgard. The God-King Hela was right, the group of Vanir wanted to start the war again. Asgard had always bullied others in the 9 realms. When had they been bullied and humiliated? Although there were some Asgardians who did not approve of Hela's kingship, it did not hinder their rejection of outsiders. After all, no matter how wrong Hela was, she was one of the Asgardian. Hela would defend Asgard's interests and fight for Asgard. And these outsiders wouldn't. Therefore, as it should be, the people of Asgard stood with Hela at this moment. When Hela asked if NJRD wanted to start a war, the Asgardians waved their weapons one after another, as if they were a group of war lunatics. In fact, the Asgardians themselves were war lunatics. This situation made NJRD frown even more. He didn't expect that Hela had gained a foothold in Asgard, and already had many supporters. The people of Asgard actually recognized Hela as the king of gods. What the hell was this? Hela was the one who killed her own father. The people of Asgard were actually willing to make such a person their god-king. Were the Asgardians crazy? NJRD couldn't figure it out. How could Hela have a part of the people's heart? However, it didn't really matter. Since it was impossible for the people of Asgard to overthrow Hela, the cruel god-king let him, Odin's good brother, come. Anyway, if he wanted to become the king of the 9 realms and lead the Vanir to step on the Asgardians, Hela must be defeated. Episode 64, War, Thor Awakens, 2. I don't want to start a war, but I am here for revenge. My good brother Odin was killed by you with despicable means. You must pay for him. NJRD gave himself an excuse to go to war and came for Odin's throne. If Odin heard him, I'm afraid that he would be angry and come back to life. After listening to NJRD's words, Hela's response was even more simple and rude. A sword of the night sky flew out directly and pointed directly at NJRD's face. NJRD's strength was not less. After all, he was one of the oldest gods in the 9 realms. Facing Hela's attack, he directly waved the trident-shaped weapon in his hand and shot down the sword of the night sky. The next moment, the war broke out. NJRD had been planning for a long time and was eager to replace the position of the Asgardians. Hela was eager for a hearty victory to consolidate her position. So from the very beginning, there was no possibility of reconciliation between the two parties. It was normal to have a big fight. NJRD waved the trident in his hand and rushed directly towards Hela. Hela was not to be outdone and slashed towards NJRD. If Hela wanted to inherit the position of Odin and become the king of the 9 realms, she must defeat the other gods of the 9 realms upright. Only in this way, her position as the king of God was justified. This was why Hela didn't let Yi intervene. And to be honest, Hela's own strength was enough for her to cope with the immediate trouble. Perhaps NJRD's strength was good, but Hela's strength was even more exaggerated. Although she couldn't beat Odin, she could easily resist other gods of the 9 realms. Didn't you see Thor, the legendary Thor, who had broken down the gods in the 9 realms before being rubbed against the ground by Hela? So just after the fight, NJRD discovered a very tragic thing. That was, he was not Hela's opponent at all. Although he was not going to be defeated for the time being, he had been completely suppressed by Hela. At this time, Hela was no longer wearing her iconic black armor. Instead, she had replaced it with a set of golden armor. She was no longer the goddess of death Hela, but the God-King Hela. As a result, Hela now looked like a Valkyrie, full of heroism and lacked a lot of gloomy feeling. Undoubtedly, this kind of Hela was more charming than the previous death goddess Hela. The scale of the war quickly expanded. In the beginning, it was just a battle between NJRD and Hela, and gradually it became a battle between the Vanir and the Asgardians. The gods of the 9 realms that NJRD found also began to attack Asgard at this moment. The strength of these gods of the 9 realms was not strong, or even better than some powerful mutants. But when facing ordinary Asgardians, these gods of the 9 realms seemed a bit powerful. For this reason, Asgard was actually at a disadvantage at the beginning. On one hand, they didn't have much preparation, on the other hand, they didn't have enough strong people. Hela was indeed strong, and NJRD could be beaten by her alone. But Hela was also caught dealing with NJRD. She was unable to free up her hands to deal with these so-called gods. But with Thor's appearance, the situation began to change a little bit. Thor was entangled in his heart. He didn't actually plan to shoot. Because he still couldn't forgive Hela for killing Odin. Although he knew in his heart that this was Odin's own choice, Odin was indeed paying the price for what he had done. But understanding was one thing, and emotional acceptance was another. Until Thor saw the Asgardians retreating under the attack of the Vanir, Thor finally couldn't sit still. If NJRD was only targeting Hela, Thor might not be able to do anything yet. But they actually did something to the people of Asgard, which was unbearable for him. So Thor came on the scene. The endless thunder was by Thor's side, and he was now the real Thor. Although there was no Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, his strength had not decreased but increased. Very easily, Thor found a not-so-famous god in the 9 realms, and then exploded the unknown Dragonclan god on the ground. Thor, who had no resistance in front of Hela, was completely like a god of war when facing the other gods of the 9 realms. This had to be admitted. The strength gap between Thor and Hela was really big. At the same time, Thor's shot also greatly boosted the morale of the people of Asgard. Until now, for the Asgardians, Hela was a stranger. But with Thor, they were very familiar. And even Thor recognized Hela as the king of gods, and now he was fighting for Hela. Then, what right did they have to question Hela's status as a king of gods? I have to say that Frigga and Thor, these two people, have given Hela a lot of help. Without Frigga's support and Thor's acquiescence, the Asgardians would not accept Hela's position as the king so quickly. With Thor's participation in the war, Asgard had gradually gained the upper hand. If nothing else, in this war between the Asgardians and the Vanir, the final winning family would definitely be the Asgardians. After all, even NJRD, the strongest of the Vanir, was not Hela's opponent. Moreover, the people of Asgard had not forgotten that Hela still had a powerful and messy queen. Although Yi didn't make a move, he gave Asgard full confidence. even Odin was not Yi Bai's opponent. They believed that these idiots of the Vanir Protoss were even more impossible to be his opponent. So in this battle, the Asgardians were determined. Just as the war was intensifying, and the Vanir were about to fail, a purple ray fell from the sky and directly fell on the land of Asgard. Then, a terrible shockwave swept across, and large areas of the city were blown into ruins. This sudden change made the entire battlefield quiet. Hela also stopped her movements. Her beautiful eyes looked at the sky with anger. Under the gaze of everyone, 5 existences with purple brilliance slowly fell. These 5 humanoid creatures were more than 20 meters tall, with sturdy muscles all over their bodies, and their faces were full of arrogance. Maybe ordinary Asgardians didn't know the identity of these guys, but Hela knew it very well. This was the most powerful force in the universe, the notorious Celestial Group. 5 members of the Celestial Group had joined the war. Episode 65, The Celestial Group is Coming, Spike Kill. 1. The sudden appearance of the Celestial Group was something that no one had expected. Whether it was NJRD or Hela, they all watched with a gloomy face the celestial gods that suddenly descended at this time. At this moment, Hela and NJRD, who were originally fighting one another, even stopped their movements tacitly. People from the 9 realms fought for life and death. That was their own business. What did it have to do with the Celestial Gods group? When was it the turn of outsiders to intervene in the affairs of the 9 realms? Moreover, the arrival of the Celestial Group was not a good sign. This was a group of notorious domineering guys. Long ago, the Celestial Group planned to use the 9 realms as an experimental base. Only this plan was destroyed by Odin at that time. Only after a long battle between the powerful Odin and the Celestial Group did he save life on Earth from extinction. Now, after Odin's death, the Celestial Group had come again. If this was a coincidence, even fools would not believe it. Everyone could see that these celestial gods just wanted to take the opportunity of Odin's death to reuse the 9 realms as their testing ground. This was a situation that neither NJRD nor Hela wanted to see. If the Celestial Group was really allowed to succeed, what face would they have in the 9 realms? In addition, most Asgardians looked at the 5 tall gods with an angry look. As soon as these arrogant guys came up, they first destroyed a large area of Asgard. This was definitely trampling on Asgard's pride. This was war. However, whether it was the hostility of NJRD or Hela, or the anger of the people of Asgard, the 5 Celestials did not take it to heart. They were a group of high gods, and would not put these ants in their eyes at all. As soon as they learned of Odin's death, they planned to turn the 9 realms into a testing ground again. This time, there would never be another Odin who could stop them. In addition to this reason, they actually came here for another purpose. They came here for Yi Bai. Soon, a tall celestial god found Yi Bai's trail. Target found, start to execute the purge order. The tall celestial group said. His voice seemed to have no feelings. These gods were said to be life, but in fact they were more like robots. Soon, a celestial god took action and flew directly in the air towards the place where Yi Bai was. This scene naturally fell in Yi Bai's eyes. He didn't even think that these ugly guys came for him. It shouldn't be, Yi Bai thought to himself. He himself was so low-key. When did he offend the Celestial Group? Was it because of Galactus? But Galactus didn't seem like someone who would trouble him. Just when Yi Bai was puzzled, the huge body of the Celestial God had already fallen in front of him. The Celestial Group was really arrogant to the extreme. They had no intention of leaving Asgard any face. The Celestial God fell down directly from the air, then smashed the dome of Odin Palace, and landed in front of Yi Bai condescendingly. After taking a look at Yi Bai and confirming the target. When Yi Bai was still at a loss, this god blasted out with a punch. Although this celestial god's shot was abrupt and Yi Bai didn't have any defenses, his speed was too slow in Yi Bai's view. So that Yi Bai even had time to think about how he provoked these ugly things? After thinking about it for a while, Yi Bai, who really didn't understand, didn't even think about it. Now that people were riding their faces to obliterate themselves, Yi Bai couldn't stand around anymore. At the fist thrown by him, Yi Bai also slammed a punch directly up. This was a very discordant scene. Yi Bai's height appeared very small in front of the celestial god. Not to mention that the fist of the celestial god was almost as big as Yi Bai's whole body. The momentum it brought was also very shocking. Even the air made a blast, and the effect of a punch was a sonic boom. Compared with the celestial god, Yi Bai's fist was even smaller. People who didn't understand the situation would definitely think that Yi Bai was going to die when they saw this scene. However, when the loud noise sounded, the ending presented was very contrasting. At the moment of the collision, the fist and arm of the celestial god began to shatter and the impact continued to spread upward. From the beginning of the finger bones, to the hand bones, the entire arm, and even the other bones of this high god. They were all beaten into powder under Yi Bai's punch, and there was no possibility of repairing them at all. Fighting with the Yi Bai's current physical strength, wasn't this looking for death? The body of the celestial god was also directly shot out. It smashed through the walls of the Golden Palace, drew an arc, and returned to the place from where he had started. In the blink of an eye, it fell to the ground, just at the feet of the other 4 celestial gods. Seeing their companion about whom they didn't know if he was alive or dead, the other celestial gods were full of consternation. Even if this poor guy didn't die, he wouldn't have the ability to move. He was completely reduced to waste. This was completely different from what they had imagined. To be reasonable, shouldn't our companion come back with Yi Bai's head? How come their companion was dying now? Was that little guy's fighting power so terrible? Why hadn't they heard of Yi Bai's reputation before? Without giving these celestial gods extra time to react, Yi Bai had already come out. Yi Bai flew directly into the air, and after a sonic boom pulled out of the flight path, he hovered over the heads of the 4 celestial gods. Looking at the 4 celestial gods under his feet, Yi Bai's eyes were as calm as water, and then he asked his question. I'm curious. I shouldn't have provoked you. Why are you targeting me? Yes, this was what Yi Bai didn't seem to understand the most. Didn't he do it well? Why did the celestial team want to take action against him? The 4 celestial gods did not answer Yi Bai's words. Instead, they slowly flew to the same height as Yi Bai, tacitly surrounding Yi Bai in the center. They had already realized that Yi Bai in front of them was definitely a hidden, terrifying powerhouse. At this time, one of the gods spoke. Your existence affects the future direction and pushes the future of the universe in an unpredictable direction. Before you cause more damage, we need to erase this variable. After listening to these words, Yi Bai understood why he was targeted by the celestial group. As these gods said, his existence was a variable. He turned the original storyline of the Marvel world into something that no one could predict. This could be seen from when Hela escaped Odin's seal. It was difficult to say whether Hela escaped Odin's seal ahead of time because Yi Bai instigated the butterfly's wings. But one thing that was certain was that under the influence of Yi Bai, the original storyline of the Marvel world had become more and more different. This was also the reason why the celestial group targeted Yi Bai. In the Marvel world, there were many strong people who could see the future. And there were many such strong people in the celestial group. After discovering Yi Bai's existence, which might change the course of the future, the celestial group naturally wouldn't let Yi Bai go. This time, the celestial group came to Yi Bai to make him understand the truth. That was, he would face the endless pursuit of the celestial group in the future. For those celestial gods, it was absolutely impossible to let him go easily. In other words, Yi Bai and the celestial group were natural enemies. After understanding this, Yi Bai no longer struggled. Even the boss of the celestial group Galactus had been defeated by him. Did he still care about the members of the celestial group? And the other 4 celestial gods did not hesitate anymore. After enclosing Yi Bai in the middle, they directly launched an offensive. The eyes of a celestial god's face began to become brighter, and finally a thick energy ray shot towards Yi Bai's body. Under these cosmic rays, the surrounding space was slightly distorted, giving people a sense of spatial disorder. Everyone had no doubt about the terrible lethality of this ray. Even Hela and NJRD had lingering fears. They asked themselves if they could face the rays of the celestial god, but they couldn't. However, Yi Bai didn't have any intention to dodge. His calm eyes also bloomed with an orange-red light at this moment. Then, the 2 rays ejected from Yi Bai's eyes slammed straight towards the rays of the celestial god. The signature skill of Darkseid and the Ancient Doomsday, the Super Heat Ray. Episode 66, The Celestial Group is Coming, Spike Kill. 2. Yi Bai's heat rays quickly collided with the rays of the celestial god. What happened was not the violent collision that everyone imagined, but a one-sided situation. The orange-red heat ray easily smashed the purple celestial god's rays, and followed the trajectory of the celestial group's rays. It fell straight on the head of the celestial god. The result was that the member of the celestial group who took the lead against Yi Bai was directly penetrated by the heat ray. Yi Bai's super heat ray, if used with all its strength, could cut the planet apart. Naturally, it was not something that a celestial god could resist. But at this moment, the other celestial gods also moved. One of the celestial gods took out a special alloy double-edged sword and rushed towards Yi-Bai at an extremely fast speed. The double-edged sword in his hand shone with cold light, and the huge body gave people a sense of oppression. No one doubted the strength of this member of the celestial group. In fact, he could easily slaughter a powerful civilization. Unfortunately, the opponent he faced today was Yi-Bai. Facing the rushing celestial god, Yi-Bai's eyes flashed with killing intent. When the double-edged sword hit the top of his head, Yi-Bai stretched out his right hand. He grabbed the double-edged sword directly and crushed it. Before this celestial group had time to accept this reality, Yi-Bai had already neared him and hit his chest with a punch. In the next second, it was like a baseball being beaten out. The body of this celestial god was smashed to the ground by Yi-Bai in a straight arc. Along with the loud noise and the tremors of the earth, this celestial god used his own body to smash a large hole in the land of Asgard. And he himself laid at the bottom of the pit. His body was broken, and he could not die anymore. The powerful celestial group, in the eyes of the people of the Nine Realms, couldn't hold up even a move in front of Yi-Bai, and was killed in seconds. The remaining two celestial gods were all looking silly. The difference in strength was too big. What made these two celestial gods even more desperate was that Yi-Bai's gaze had already turned to them. Escape. At this moment, there was only one thought left in the minds of the remaining two celestial gods. If you don't run away, you can only wait to die if you stay. The strength that Yi-Bai showed before was definitely not something they could shake. The energy was not enough, and the body was directly crushed. In front of such opponents, they couldn't even find a point of resistance. There was no need to discuss. The two celestial gods split and ran away very tacitly. At the very least, it was possible for one of them to live. It's just a pity that Yi-Bai didn't give them a chance to escape. Seeing the embarrassed figures of the two celestial gods running away, the killing intent in Yi-Bai's eyes did not dissipate. A large amount of pitch-black magic power gathered in front of Yi-Bai, and finally an arrow formed by the power of pure darkness condensed. Black magic star destruction. As soon as Yi-Bai's thoughts moved, this star-destroying arrow turned into a black light and flew towards one of the celestial gods. Then it caught up with the target without any suspense, and directly penetrated the body of the celestial god. Before the body of this celestial god fell, his body began to be corroded by the power of black magic and burned to ashes. The last celestial god saw this scene from the sidelines, and his heart was even more frightened, and the speed was 3 points faster. But Yi-Bai had already chased him. His speed was many times faster than him. In the blink of an eye, Yi-Bai had already come behind him. And at the moment of catching up, Yi-Bai pressed his hand on the top of the celestial god's head, exerting a slight force. With a click, the skull of this celestial god was directly crushed by Yi-Bai, and an exaggerated dent appeared on the skull. At this point, the 4 celestial gods were all destroyed. From the first shot to the end of the battle, Yi-Bai spent less than a minute in total. The 4 celestial gods group even failed to resist. They were killed by Yi-Bai without any suspense, and couldn't even escape. This scene greatly shocked all witnesses present. At the same time, people had a clearer understanding of Yi-Bai's strength. As early as when Yi-Bai defeated Odin, many people knew that Yi-Bai was terrible. But at this time, they suddenly discovered that he had been underestimated before. There were a total of 5 celestial gods. Even Odin would have a headache when he saw them, and the entire 9 realms would be facing a big enemy. As a result, in front of Yi-Bai, they were swept away like chickens. And the way to die was different for each of them. This strength was shocking. After solving these celestial gods with his hands, Yi-Bai didn't have many ups and downs. It was as if he accidentally stepped on a few ants while walking. He even hovered calmly in the air and continued to watch Hela and their battle. There was no excitement about defeating a powerful enemy at all. Yi-Bai had already seen that Hela's strength was enough to deal with this crisis, and he simply stopped taking action. Instead, he focused on admiring his wife's heroic posture. As for the celestial gods group, those people were not from the 9 realms, and they came to specifically trouble Yi-Bai. It could be regarded as a personal grievance between the celestial gods group and Yi-Bai, and it would not have any impact on the situation of the 9 realms. Yi-Bai also didn't really feel excited about killing the celestial group. The celestial group was actually a very embarrassing existence in the Marvel world, and it belonged to the #1 dragon role. Their strength was indeed not weak, but they were too vulnerable to real strength. In many major events in the Marvel world, the first thing some supervillains did after they came out of the mountain was to kill a bunch of gods and sacrifice them to the heavens. This had seemed to become a certain rule of the game. If you didn't kill the gods, you would be embarrassed to say that you were a supervillain. And in the Marvel world, the slaughter of the Celestial group had also happened many times. It was almost extinct several times. However, not everyone in the Celestial group was weak. There were still some powerful ones. No one knew the exact number of members of the Celestial group, but it was definitely not a minority. Within this huge number, some Celestial gods were weaker and only had the strength of the Heavenly Father level. Some Celestial gods were exaggerated, and they could break their wrists with the 5 gods. Therefore, Yi Bai really didn't think there was any excitement about killing the 5 Celestial gods, so he had to calm down. With the end of Yi Bai's battle, Hela and the others froze for a while before they started fighting again. It's just that the fighting situation had tilted sideways to Asgard's side. If NJRD could support the fight before the arrival of the Celestial group, then he had now completely collapsed. His own strength was not as good as Hela, and his army was not as good as Asgard's elite warriors. Now that after seeing Yi Bai's powerful strength, NJRD didn't even have the courage. Yi Bai's strength really scared him. It made him afraid of going all out. Although Yi Bai seemed indifferent, he didn't want to intervene in the internal disputes of the 9 realms, but who knew if it was true? What if he accidentally hurt Hela and Yi Bai went mad straight away? NJRD didn't think he could be harder than the life of the 5 Celestials. So this also caused NJRD to be restrained in the next battle, and he didn't even dare to use all his strength. In addition, his own strength was not as good as Hela, and the result could be imagined. Hela played more and more relaxed, but she also understood NJRD's concerns. However, Hela was not dissatisfied with this in her heart. On the contrary, she was very willing to accept it. Was this how it feels if someone has your back? I love it. In order to win NJRD faster, Hela even launched her own kingdom of death, so it was even more difficult for NJRD to resist. God-King Hela, I admire your bravery and strength, but if you continue to fight, it will only hurt both sides. Why don't we stop here and sign the armistice agreement? NJRD, who felt more and more unable to continue the fight, had already retired at this time. He noticed that he really didn't have the courage to fight Hela again. Therefore, it was a disguised surrender to open the mouth for peace. However, how could Hela agree to his terms? He was the one who wanted to fight, and he was also the one who wanted to stop the war. How could there be such an easy thing? Truce? Impossible. From the moment you set foot on the land of Asgard, one side of this war will surely fall completely. Hela said with a sneer, without any thought of stopping the war. Now that Asgard had secured the victory, how could it be possible to cease the war easily? And Hela was also counting on a big victory to consolidate her authority as the God King. Episode 67, The End of the War, Return to Earth, Part 1. If NJRD was given another chance to choose, he would never come to Asgard to provoke a war. Wasn't it good to stay at Vanaheim honestly? Why did he have to pursue the position of God King of the 9 realms? Asgard's strength was much stronger than he thought. Even if Odin was dead, there was his daughter Hela, who was not much worse than Odin. And the key was that Hela was still young. This also caused him to fall into a hard fight. At this time, he could only try hard to support himself, and he knew that he was already doomed. Hela's strength was really strong. After all, Hela already had a fierce reputation, and he had also been psychologically prepared. Although Hela's strength was much stronger than he thought. But the sudden appearance of Yi Bai was really too much. He looked inconspicuous and didn't have any reputation in the 9 realms. But what was the result? The 5 gods of the Celestial group were killed in less than 10 seconds. With this fighting power, even if Odin was resurrected at the moment, could not keep up with him. Looking at the corpses of the Celestial gods, NJRD felt cold in his heart. If he had known that there was Yi Bai next to Hela, he would definitely not have thought about even trying. Unfortunately, there was no chance for regret in the world. No matter how much he regretted it, he still needed to pay the price for what he did at this moment. And this price was too heavy. It was likely to pull the entire Vanaheim down into the abyss. NJRD, thinking about this, forgot one thing. He forgot that distraction in battle was a taboo. Hela also keenly caught NJRD's distraction and then waved the sword of the night sky in her hand to pierce NJRD's defense. The black long sword in her hand pierced NJRD's body directly, stabbing him through. At this point, the outcome had been divided. This was the reason why NJRD had escaped death at such a critical juncture, otherwise the sword would directly kill him. Even if he did not die by chance, his current breath was weakened to the extreme. I surrender. I am willing to treat you as the God-King of the 9 realms. In the future, the Vanir Protoss is also willing to become an affiliate of the Asgardians and maintain the rule of the Asgardians. After suffering such a severe blow, NJRD was not feeling well. He didn't even have time to examine his wounds. Moreover, he had to deal with the onslaught of Hela. At the same time, he chanted surrender, confessing his failure this time. NJRD had already known that he had gone overboard. Not to mention the extravagant desire for the position of the God-King of the 9 realms. It would be great if he was able to save his life. So he confessed quickly, for fear that Hela would take advantage of his weakness and kill him. She had already killed one Odin, so she didn't mind killing another NJRD. Hela sneered after hearing NJRD's words. Now he thought of begging for mercy? Too late. Hela's personality was somewhat similar to Yibai's, and they were both the type who believed that grudges must be fulfilled. NJRD, the bad old man, wanted to overthrow her kingship while her foundation was not stable. His heart was shameful. Now that he was about to fail, he wanted to beg for mercy. How could it be so easy? I can't accept an ambitious man's surrender, and Vanaheim doesn't need a king to start war. Hela said coldly. Her offense did not weaken at all. On the contrary, it became even more fierce. Tea time, Hela's meaning was also very obvious. That was, NJRD must die. And at the same time, she would also support another obedient king to manage Vanaheim. NJRD naturally heard Hela's intentions. He knew that Hela was a ruthless person and wanted him to die. This made him very unwilling and angry. You should know that even Odin never thought of killing him. However, behind being unwilling and being angry, there was more helplessness. Because even if he knew that Hela wanted his life, he could do nothing to stop her. Perhaps he really was old, and the future of the 9 realms belonged to young people. As if confirming NJRD's speculation, Thor's war with the other gods of the 9 realms ended soon. Although Thor was violently rubbed on the ground by Hela, he still had no problem hitting other gods. After awakening his own potential, Thor's strength had surpassed his past self. Today's Thor had almost touched the level of Heavenly Father. If he could get the Stormbreaker, maybe he could really become a powerhouse at the level of his father. This war had reached the current situation, and NJRD's side was completely defeated. Obviously, Asgard was still as strong as ever. Even if Asgard lost Odin, it still had the strength to rule the 9 realms. As for NJRD, he already knew in his heart that he was really defeated this time. He was not only crushed by Odin for a lifetime, but he would also die in Hela's hands. However, after falling into a mortal situation, NJRD also completely let go of his mentality, and no longer became daunted. He even began to forget about Yibai's threat, and he no longer had any hesitation in fighting against Hela with his full strength. The beasts that were cornered were often the most dangerous. The cornered beast would fight even more aggressively. When NJRD realized that his end was death. Instead of losing his fighting spirit, he burst out with an even more powerful fighting force. For a time, he was even on par with Hela. NJRD's eruption surprised Hela a little, but she was only a bit surprised. In fact, if NJRD could break out sooner, it might have caused some trouble for Hela. But now, he could no longer affect the overall situation. Hela was like a ruthless huntress. She had already calculated all the struggling routes of her prey. Even NJRD's sudden eruption only delayed his death. Soon, facing that calm face, NJRD fell into a real despair. Finally, in a confrontation between the sword of the night sky and his trident, he failed to block Hela's attack. Hela cut off his head with a sword and he died completely. Before coming, NJRD had an ambition to become the king of the 9 realms like Odin. But he died in Hela's hands, just like Odin. NJRD is dead, you are done. Give up resistance, I will not kill you in the name of the God-King. Otherwise you will all be buried here today. After NJRD was beheaded, Hela's expression remained unchanged. While holding NJRD's head, Hela stood in the sky and shouted, showing off her achievements. Hearing Hela's words, the battlefield below suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at Hela, who was like a Valkyrie, and at the same time saw NJRD's head in her hand. The next second, a huge cheer sounded. The chants of praise from the people of Asgard showed that they had truly recognized Hela's status. For the glory of Asgard. For the glory of the Norse. The people of Asgard cheered. Their morale reached the peak, and they killed the invaders like bloodthirsty wolves. Asgard itself was a militant race, not to mention that their morale was so high today. As for Vanaheim's army, led by NJRD. At the moment, they were all blind-eyed. If you looked closely, you could even see the confusion and fear in the eyes of these people. When the two armies were fighting, the most desperate thing for an army was that their leader was killed by the other side. This was a fatal blow to the soldiers' morale. And Hela in a one-on-one situation, directly and strongly beheading NJRD. This made the people in Vanaheim fear Hela. Even against the other Asgardians, there was fear. At this moment, the people of Vanaheim finally remembered the years when Asgard once dominated them. That was the most glorious time for Odin, and everyone in the 9 realms had bowed their heads. Now Hela used her own strength to let everyone understand that another Odin was born. Episode 68, The End of the War, Return to Earth, Part 2. Several days have passed since the original battle. After Hela beheaded NJRD, the war completely lost its suspense. Asgard prevailed, and all the invaders died on Asgard's land. Hela also relied on her excellent performance in this big victory to secure her position as the king of gods and at the same time master many people's hearts. Nowadays, no one in Asgard would question Hela's kingship anymore. Just today, Ebi found Hela and said goodbye. After spending a few days with Hela in Asgard and experiencing the feeling of being favored by the God King, Ebi planned to leave. Asgard was actually good, and the people of Asgard were also very enthusiastic about Ebi. After all, people admired the strong, and Ebi was undoubtedly the strongest in Asgard today. It's just that Asgard was too boring. The biggest entertainment activity was constant drinking and bragging. Ebi couldn't adapt to it at all. He was still more accustomed to life on Earth, which was also the main reason why Ebi intended to leave. Then I will go with you. Hela hurriedly came to him and said, after hearing that Ebi wanted to leave. Recently Hela had become a winner in life. She not only became the God King of Asgard, Ebi also accompanied her. But when she heard that Ebi was going to return to Earth, Hela thought for the first time that she should go back with Ebi. Ebi was a little bit dumbfounded. Don't you care about Asgard now? Now that Hela had just taken the throne, there were too many things for her to deal with. Recently, she was also preparing to send troops to Vanaheim to avenge NJRD's previous invasion of Asgard. With so many things, Hela could not leave right now. Otherwise, she would appear too incompetent as a god king. Well, I can't withdraw from Asgard yet. Hela knew this too, so she nodded helplessly. But don't worry. I can control the Rainbow Bridge now, and I can accompany you at any time. Hela immediately said again. She was used to the days of living with Ebi and didn't want to be separated from Ebi for too long. It's best to deal with Asgard's affairs during the day and go live with Ebi in the evening. Perfect time management. If Odin knew that the Rainbow Bridge he had paid a huge price to build was actually used by Hela in this way, I don't know if he would come alive in anger. Ebi was a little bit dumbfounded when he heard this. How could he just forget the huge movement made by the Rainbow Bridge? Ebi could already imagine that he might not be able to live a leisurely life in the future. Let me figure it out, trust me, it won't take too long. Ebi smiled and comforted Hela. At the same time, he thought in his heart that it's time to learn how to use the portal from GUI. With the help of the portal, coming to Asgard would be much more convenient in the future. As for the space gem, Ebi didn't plan to let it go. Even if he didn't need it, it's not bad as a gift for Hela. At the very least, with the space gem, Hela would be able to visit him more easily in the future, and there would be no need to use the Rainbow Bridge. Well, I respect your ideas. I will also handle Asgard's affairs as soon as possible, and then I will accompany you. I only discovered now that I actually don't care about the position of the King of Gods. I prefer to live with you more. Hela came to Ebi's side and said coquettishly. This little daughter's posture could only be seen in front of Ebi. The people of Asgard would never have imagined that their god King Hela would be so dependent on Ebi. In the end, Ebi left. Hela personally sent him to the Rainbow Bridge, and she was accompanied by Thor. After the war, Thor found an excuse to leave Asgard. After such a major life change, Thor also wanted to go to the Earth to relax. For him, the best thing right now was to find his girlfriend Jane Foster, and then bury himself in her warm heart to heal his pain. With Jane's kind character, after listening to his experience, she would definitely comfort him. Well, in fact, Thor couldn't forgive Hela until now. He didn't even know how to face this sister. That's why he thought of escaping. As for leaving with Yi Bai, Thor did not expect this. It was purely a coincidence. After a burst of colorful light, Yi Bai and Thor disappeared from Asgard. When they reappeared, they were already in a suburb of Big Apple City. Without thinking of talking to Thor, Yi Bai turned around and planned to return to his manor, but Thor stopped him. Well, if we can, shall we still be friends in the future? Yi Bai? Yi Bai really did not expect that Thor would take the initiative to speak to him. In Odin's death, Yi Bai also played a key role. With Thor's character, could he forgive him? As if seeing Yi Bai's doubts, Thor scratched his head and walked in front of Yi Bai. Actually, I don't blame you. I know that my father did some wrong things, including those he did to you. So I don't think what you did is wrong. He should not have attacked you with that damn reason. Thor said to Yi Bai that he didn't have any hatred against Yi Bai because of Odin's affairs. Yi Bai, what else could he say? As expected, none of Odin's sons had a normal brain circuit. But that's okay, at least he didn't have to worry that Thor would come to trouble him. If you don't blame me, then we are still friends. Yi Bai said, even though Thor was a little bit naive, he was not bad towards his friends. And speaking of the relationship, Thor was still Yi Bai's brother-in-law. Since it was his own, Yi Bai wouldn't make the relationship with him too rigid. But Yi Bai had obviously forgotten. His brother-in-law was not only one Thor. Episode 69, Thanos and Loki, The Trickiest Man, Part 1, at the border and corner of the universe, in the deadly extinct star field. Thanos welcomed a very special guest today. Loki, who fell into the abyss of the universe in Thor 1, was now restrained by his hands and feet, and was taken to Thanos as a captive. Looking at the tall and stalwart Thanos, even Loki, who had always been very skinny, felt the pressure at this time. Converging his iconic smirk, his face became serious. The third child of Odin, the king of Asgard, Loki, right? He turned around and said to him, as Thanos apparently knew Loki's identity a long time ago. That's right. It's me, the respectable great titan, Lord Thanos. Loki said to Thanos in a flattering tone, but this didn't affect Loki's bitterness. As if always playing, Loki had this special charm that could make all formal occasions turn weird. In addition, Thanos' real name was Thanos, and his nickname was not Great Titan, but Crazy Titan. The source of this nickname was due to Thanos' crazy actions, who often slaughtered half of the lives on a planet. You should know my relationship with Asgard. I was defeated by Odin a long time ago. Now, give me a reason why I should not kill you today. Thanos' tone was flat. He was not affected by Loki's flattery. But this plain tone also contained killing intent, and he obviously didn't intend to let Loki go easily. I'm sorry for what happened to you, but in fact I also hate that old man. If you have carefully investigated my life experience, you should know that I am not actually Odin's son. I mean, if you want to get revenge on Odin, then you obviously shouldn't find me. Loki tried to relax himself more, but his trembling body betrayed him. In fact, Loki was still a little panicked. After all, it was Thanos who was standing in front of him. Even Loki was terrified by the ruthless methods of this crazy titan. You're right, the blood in your body comes from the frost giant, and you are born to be Asgard's mortal enemy. Thanos spoke lightly, knowing Loki's details very well. Obviously, Thanos also had his own information channel in the Nine Realms, and they could convey accurate information. Yes, the significance of the existence of the frost giant is to destroy Asgard. Speaking of which, we still have the same enemy, we should be friends. Loki looked at Thanos and said. Now, in order to fight for the chance to survive, Loki didn't mind his humble performance. Friends? I never believe in friends, and I cannot believe in you even more. Loki, the god of tricks, I've heard of your reputation. Thanos' face was obviously mocking him, and he sneered at the word friend said by Loki. This situation made Loki feel bad. He began to crazily think about what he should do to make his situation a little safer. If you don't like the word friend, what about partners? Although I am the god of tricks, I am the person who pays the most attention to the spirit of contract. I have never cheated my partners. Loki made a vow, guaranteeing that the determined look on his face almost convinced even his own self. If Thor was here, he would definitely curse Loki's shamelessness. Because the thing that Loki had done the most since he was a child was to use the name of a partner to cheat him hard. Obviously, Thanos' intelligence collection work had not been so meticulous yet. After hearing Loki's remarks, Thanos actually believed him a little bit. Tell me, what cooperative method do you have? Thanos looked interested, but the fierce light in his eyes did not converge. Loki didn't doubt that if he didn't answer well, the end would be very serious. After sorting out his thoughts, Loki had an idea in his mind. I have many abilities and can help you accomplish anything. I am definitely the best partner you can find. Why don't we make a deal? I will help you complete one thing, and you will let me go? Loki said to Thanos, with an honest-to-God smile on the corner of his mouth. In fact, what Loki planned was that as long as he left Thanos' lair, he would immediately hide for a while and wait until the limelight passed. Who knew, Thanos really touched his chin and seriously considered this matter. Because he happened to have one thing that needed someone to deal with it. It's just that the general under his hand couldn't be free for the time being, so it had been put on hold. Loki might be a good candidate right now. Are you really willing to do something for me? The thing I want you to do is not that easy to do. Thanos really intended to let Loki try, because there was no more suitable candidate than Loki. But it doesn't matter, it's my honor to share the worries for the great Titan. Loki smiled brighter and said compliments without stopping. If Thor could have half of Loki's eloquence, perhaps he would have won Odin's favor and become the king of gods. In the Midgard of the Nine Realms, there is something called the Universe Rubik's Cube. Can you retrieve it for me? Thanos said to Loki, while carefully observing Loki's expression. He was trying to see if Loki would lie in any way. When Loki heard these words, his heart was moved. He immediately knew what Thanos was talking about. That was a treasure. As for Midgard, which was the Earth, Loki still had some understanding about it. Although human beings on the Earth were a bit weak, the water was very deep. At the same time, Loki thought more about what benefits he could get from Thanos. After thinking about it, Loki made his own request to Thanos. I can agree to this, but I also have my own conditions. First of all, you have to give me an army, after all, the water in that place is deep. Secondly, I also need a handy weapon, which will allow me to perform better. Finally, I need to gain the domination of the Earth, and the cosmic Rubik's Cube can belong to you. This is a fair deal, and I promise I will do it well. Loki didn't worry that Thanos would reject him, the big deal was that he would ask for a little less benefits. Anyway, discussing the conditions was by itself asking for a wild price and sitting on the ground to pay back. What Loki didn't expect was that after Thanos thought about it, he nodded and agreed. This was honestly so good. Loki thought in his heart, and he even felt that Thanos' huge body no longer looked terrifying, but instead had a silly feeling. I can agree to your terms, but I also hope you can do as you say. If you mess up, trust me even if you hide in any corner of the universe, and I will find you. Thanos warned Loki, and at the same time picked up a scepter from behind. The yellow gem on the top of the scepter was particularly eye-catching. Loki was a person who knew the goods. He knew what this yellow gem was at a glance. One of the Infinity Stones, the Mind Stone. And this was Loki's second condition, a weapon for him. In fact, Loki himself did not expect that Thanos would trust him so much. Is it true that he was moved by my words and believed in me unreservedly? If it was true, then this was so moving. How did such a person live in the universe until now? What Loki didn't know was that Thanos didn't believe him at all, but felt that Loki didn't dare to lie to him. There were many people who had deceived Thanos, but they were all dead. Over time, no one in the universe dared to fool Thanos anymore. Even today Thanos didn't think that Loki had the courage to lie to himself. Little did he know that what he had encountered was the trickiest person in the entire Marvel universe. The guy, Deadpool, was actually very troublesome, and he had an endless number of death-seeking operations. But the wave of Deadpool was based on the premise that he knew he would not die. But Loki was different. He used his own life to trick, so Loki was the real trickster, and he would start tricking when he was about to die. Happy cooperation, I will be able to bring us a victory soon. Loki said, very satisfied, and his heart was even more excited. I, Loki, finally turned over today. Episode 70, Thanos and Loki, The Trickiest Man, Part 2. Is this the space spell? It doesn't seem too difficult. At the other end of the Earth, Kamar Taj Yibai was in an empty courtyard, practicing the spell he had just learned from the Ancient One. One could see Yibai wearing a hanging ring in his hand, and easily drawing a golden circular portal in front of him. At the other end of the portal was Yibai's own manor. And this was Yibai's first try at practicing the spell. To be precise, Yibai hadn't practiced at all. Just after watching Master Gu Yi's demonstration, he learned it directly. Originally, Yibai thought that it would be difficult for him to learn magic, but he didn't expect magic to be so easy. Were all his Kryptonian templates magic geniuses? Or was his own magic talent so high? In fact, this had nothing to do with the Kryptonian template. It was the black magic encyclopedia that Yi Bai had obtained before that had helped him. So that Yi Bai's magic talent, without his own knowledge, was elevated to the apex. After listening to Yi Bai's mutter, Gui's mouth on the side twitched her. What was he talking about? Not difficult. Do you know how long I practiced when I cast my first spell? 3 months, this is still fast. Otherwise, without enough talent, Gui would not be able to grow into today's supreme mage. But Gui, who had always had a sense of superiority, was really hit hard by Yi Bai. This guy's magic talent was outrageous. Any spell could be used after being seen once. Who could withstand it? Fortunately, Gui was a broad-minded person, whose heart was as broad as the sea, and she did not delight in things or sorrow herself. Do you want to learn this spell? The mirror space spell is the world where we first met. Gui tried to conceal the curvature of her mouth, not wanting her careful thoughts to be seen by Yi Bai. In fact, Gui planned to be Yi Bai. That's why this proposal was made, to let Yi Bai try the mirror space spell. Gui had absolute confidence because this spell was her killer card, and currently there was no second mage in Kamatage who could learn this trick. One could imagine how difficult this spell was. When Yi Bai couldn't get started after racking his brains, she would stand up and pat Yi Bai's shoulder, telling him that the young men should not go too far. Normal people needed to practice such a difficult spell for several months. After all, not everyone was like her who could learn it in one day. For young people, laying a solid foundation was the most important thing. Then, she would leave with a light expression, just like wind and cloud. The life of the Supreme Master was so dull and boring. Okay, then I will try. Yi Bai didn't know the drama in Master Guyi's heart, but he was very interested in this spell. So he picked up the book on mirror space spell and started reading it. With Yi Bai's reading speed, in about 10 minutes, the spell of more than 3 million words was read. Then he recalled the mirror space that he had shattered before and deduced it in his heart. Soon, Yi Bai completed all the preparations and planned to eagerly try it. Gui stood beside Yi Bai, smiling at him. Gui had already thought about how he would comfort Yi Bai when he failed to cast the spell. At the same time, she must show her master demeanor. Yi Bai held the mysterious seal in his hand, and at the same time a large amount of magic power poured into the hanging ring in his hand. Subsequently, countless fragments of mirrors emerged from the hanging ring and swept in all directions at a very exaggerated speed. In the blink of an eye, everything around him changed. They were no longer in Kamar Taj, but in a starry sky. Yi Bai had now learned the mirror space, which was originally used by Gui to trap Yi Bai. The smile on the corner of Guyi's mouth almost froze, and she looked at the scene in disbelief. She knew that Yi Bai's magic talent was actually very high, but she didn't think it was so high. He just read the spell book once and learned a spell with exaggerated difficulty. Was this still a human? Moreover, this mirrored space built by Yi Bai was even wider than the previous one built by Mage Gui. Previously, the ancient one, Gui, built just an earth, but what Yi Bai built now was a starry sky. Mage, do you think this is a success? Yi Bai, who didn't notice the confusion in Guyi's eyes, asked her. After hearing Yi Bai's words, Master Gui came to her senses from the state of doubting life. Yi Bai broke Guyi's grandmaster's temperament. After a light cough, Gui spoke. Not bad, but you can try to add some more details to this mirror space. Overall, just so. What else could Gui do? Gui could only deal with Yi Bai by pretending that you are not bad, continue to work hard in the future. In fact, Gui was really hit. For the first time, she felt that people were different. Some people were people, and some people were monsters. Yi Bai didn't think too much about it, instead he took it for granted. As the supreme mage, her magic talent must be higher than him. He did not notice the guilty conscience in the tone of Mage Gui at all. Are there other spells? I want to learn more. Yi Bai said to Master Gui. Gui had promised him that she would teach him all the spells. Moreover, Yi Bai was now very enthusiastic about spells and was very interested in them. Just like playing games, there was a sense of joy in getting achievement.